I will not marry a woman I have never met." The entire royal hall went silent. Then the Alpha King looked across the room, and for the first time in decades, the wolf inside him answered someone before he did. Elena Whitmore stood alone beneath the towering windows of Frostvale Castle, surrounded by powerful wolves who had already decided what she was worth. An omega from a small village. A sacrifice. A name written on an old agreement. Nothing more. But she lifted her chin and refused to look away. "Then send me back," she said quietly. "Because I did not come here to beg for a crown. I came here to save my home." Months earlier, Willow Creek had been a peaceful village hidden between the forests and mountains of the Northern Territories. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where the lights stayed warm during winter nights, and where Elena spent her days helping neighbors who had no one else to turn to. She had never been the strongest Omega. She could not command a pack or claim a powerful bloodline. But she had something people often overlooked. She listened. She understood. Even the wild creatures of the forest seemed calmer around her. Then the royal messenger arrived with news that changed everything. The protection agreement between Willow Creek and Frostvale Kingdom was about to expire. Without the Alpha King's support, the village would lose its place under royal protection. The elders gathered in the old meeting house, searching for a solution. And then the ancient tradition was spoken aloud. A bond between the village and the royal family. A marriage arrangement. A chosen Omega. The room became painfully quiet. Elena already knew what would happen next. No one wanted to say her name. No one wanted to look at her. Until she stepped forward. "I will go." The words shocked everyone, including herself. But Elena knew the truth. If she stayed silent, other people would pay the price for her fear. She traveled for 3 days through snow-covered roads to reach Frostvale Castle, expecting to meet a cruel ruler who saw Omegas as tools of politics. Instead, she found a man who looked just as trapped as she felt. Adrian Blackthorn, the Alpha King, stood at the center of the throne room wearing the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. His reputation was legendary. Cold, unreachable, a king who had never allowed anyone close enough to see the person behind the crown. "You understand what this marriage means?" Adrian asked. His voice was calm, but every wolf in the room felt the authority behind it. Elena looked directly at him. "Yes, it means my village survives." Something changed in the air. Not a sound, not a movement. Something deeper. Adrian felt it before he understood it. A strange familiarity. A connection he had spent years believing was impossible. His wolf recognized her. His mind rejected it. Because the woman standing before him was not supposed to matter. She was supposed to be a political agreement. A duty. A stranger. But as Elena turned toward the cold stone walls of the castle, Adrian realized the truth he feared most. The Omega who came to his kingdom to sacrifice everything for others might be the one person capable of changing the fate of the entire pack. And neither of them knew that the marriage meant to save a village was about to challenge the heart of an Alpha King. The first night Elena Whitmore spent inside Frostvale Castle, she realized something was wrong. She had expected a prison disguised as a palace. She had expected cold stares, silent judgment, and a king who would remind her every moment that she was only there because of an agreement. But instead, she found a place that felt strangely empty. The halls were enormous, with stone walls, ancient paintings, and banners representing generations of Alpha Kings. Yet behind all that power was a silence that felt almost lonely. Elena followed a royal attendant through the castle corridors until she reached the room prepared for her. "You will stay here until the ceremony arrangements are complete," the attendant said. "The king requested that you have everything you need." Elena looked around the room. Warm blankets, fresh clothes, a small fireplace already burning. It was more kindness than she expected, but kindness from a stranger was still confusing. "Why would he care?" she whispered. The attendant hesitated before answering. "Because King Adrian is not the man people believe he is." The next morning, Elena was summoned to the royal council chamber. She entered a room filled with leaders from different packs across the kingdom. Every person there carried influence, history, and power. Elena immediately felt the difference between her small village and this world of politics. One of the council members looked at her carefully. "An Omega from Willow Creek," he said. A surprising choice. Elena knew what he meant. He did not see her as a future queen. He saw a village girl who had stepped into a place she did not belong. Before she could respond, Adrian entered the room. The entire chamber stood. The Alpha King walked with quiet confidence, but Elena noticed something others might have missed. He looked tired. Not weak. Not uncertain. Just tired from carrying responsibilities no one else could understand. "The discussion is over," Adrian said. "Elena is my guest in this kingdom, and she will be treated with respect." The room immediately became silent. Elena looked at him, surprised. She had expected him to protect his reputation, not hers. Later that afternoon, she found Adrian standing alone in the castle courtyard, watching the snow fall over the mountains. For a moment, he did not look like a king. He looked like a man who had forgotten what peace felt like. "Do you always stand out here alone?" Elena asked. Adrian turned slightly. "Most people do not ask questions they already know the answer to." Elena smiled faintly. "Maybe that is why nobody tells you the truth." For the first time, something almost like amusement crossed his face. A small moment, almost impossible to notice. But Elena saw it, and Adrian noticed that she saw it. Then the strange feeling returned. The same invisible pull from the night before. The same impossible connection his instincts could not explain. Adrian stepped back, forcing distance between them. "You should be careful in this castle," he said. Elena looked confused. "Why?" His expression became serious. "Because not everyone here sees you as a person." The warning stayed with her long after he left. Elena came to Frostvale believing she was the one making a sacrifice. But now she wondered if the Alpha King was hiding a sacrifice of his own. And somewhere beneath the rules, politics, and royal expectations, something ancient had begun to awaken between them. The days that followed were supposed to be simple. Elena Whitmore was meant to learn the rules of Frostvale Castle, prepare for a royal ceremony, and accept the role that had been chosen for her. But nothing about being near Adrian Blackthorne felt simple. The Alpha King kept his distance, yet he was always aware of where she was. If she entered a room, his attention shifted. If someone spoke harshly to her, his expression changed before he even realized it. And that frightened him more than any enemy outside the kingdom. Adrian had spent years mastering control. As Alpha King, every decision had consequences. Every emotion had to be measured. A leader could not allow personal feelings to influence the future of an entire pack. But Elena was different. She did not treat him like a ruler sitting above everyone else. She treated him like a person. One evening, Elena found Adrian reviewing reports in the royal library. The room was filled with old books, maps, and records from generations of pack leaders. "Do you ever stop working?" she asked. Adrian looked up. "Do you always ask questions that make people uncomfortable?" Elena smiled slightly. "Only when people avoid answering them." For a moment, the tension between them softened. Adrian closed the book in front of him. "The kingdom does not allow me much time for anything else." "That sounds lonely," Elena said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Most people would have called his life powerful. They would have admired the crown, the castle, and the respect that followed him everywhere. But Elena saw what others ignored. A king can be surrounded by thousands of people and still have no one who truly knows him, she continued. Adrian did not answer, because she was right. The next morning, Elena walked through the training grounds where members of different packs gathered. She noticed something unusual. The wolves that usually kept their distance from outsiders seemed calmer around her. Even the royal pack members who had been suspicious began watching her differently. One young wolf approached carefully, expecting her to step away. Instead, Elena lowered herself and spoke gently. "It is okay. I am not here to hurt you." The wolf relaxed almost immediately. Several pack members exchanged surprised looks. Adrian watched from a distance, unable to explain what he was seeing. There were stories about Omegas who carried a rare connection to the natural balance of the wolf clans. Stories many believed were only myths. That evening, Adrian searched through the royal archives. He found an old record mentioning a bloodline connected to harmony between divided packs. The name written in the ancient document made him freeze. Whitmore, Elena's family name. Meanwhile, Elena began noticing changes in herself. Whenever Adrian entered a room, she felt a strange sense of recognition. Not fear, not obligation, something deeper. But she refused to believe it. She had not come to Frostvale for love. She had come to protect Willow Creek. When Adrian finally approached her privately, he spoke with unusual hesitation. "There is something happening between us." Elena looked at him carefully. "And what do you think it is?" For a long moment, the Alpha King said nothing. because the truth was the one thing he could not command. His wolf had already chosen an answer, but his heart was still afraid to accept it. And before either of them could understand the connection forming between them, the royal council discovered the same secret Adrian had just uncovered. The secret hidden inside the royal archives was not supposed to be discovered. For generations, the name Whitmore had disappeared from the records of Frostvale Kingdom. But now, standing in the quiet archive room beneath the castle, Adrian Blackthorne stared at the old pages that connected Elena's bloodline to a forgotten chapter of wolf history. The Omega who arrived from Willow Creek was not just a village girl caught in a royal agreement. She was connected to a legacy that many powerful wolves wanted to control. Adrian closed the ancient book and felt the weight of the discovery settle over him. He had spent his entire life protecting the kingdom from threats outside the walls. He never expected the greatest challenge would come from protecting someone standing right in front of him. The next morning, the royal council demanded answers. Elena entered the chamber beside Adrian, unaware that every person in the room already knew her secret. The Whitmore bloodline was believed to be gone, one council member said. If the records are accurate, this changes the balance between the packs. Elena looked from one face to another. I do not understand. I am just from Willow Creek. The council member gave a cold smile. That is exactly why this is dangerous. You do not know what you carry. Adrian immediately stepped forward. Enough. His voice was calm, but the authority behind it filled the room. She is not a resource to be discussed. Elena looked at him, surprised. She had expected him to see her as another responsibility, another problem for the throne. Instead, he was defending her choice to be treated like a person. After the meeting, Elena followed Adrian into the hallway. Why did you do that? She asked. Adrian stopped. Do what? Protect me. For a moment, he looked away. The answer was more complicated than he wanted to admit. Because you deserve respect. Elena studied him carefully. That is not the whole reason. Adrian remained silent. And that silence told her enough. Something was changing between them. Something neither of them fully understood. Later that evening, Frostvale held a gathering for leaders from the surrounding packs. It was meant to introduce Elena formally to the kingdom. But instead of acceptance, she felt the pressure of hundreds of watching eyes. Some whispered that she was only lucky. Others questioned whether an Omega from a small village could stand beside an Alpha King. Elena felt the old familiar feeling return. The feeling of being underestimated. But this time, she did not step back. When one leader questioned whether she belonged in Frostvale, Elena calmly answered, a title does not decide a person's value. Neither does their position in a pack. The room went quiet. Adrian watched her from across the hall. For years, he had surrounded himself with people who respected his power. But Elena was the first person who respected his humanity. And now he understood something that frightened him. The bond between them was not becoming stronger because of duty. It was becoming stronger because they were beginning to see each other. But as Elena left the gathering, she noticed a sealed message waiting in her room. Inside was a warning from someone within the kingdom. A single sentence was written across the page. You were never brought here to become queen. You were brought here because someone believes you can save the kingdom. Elena stared at the message, realizing the truth she feared most. Her sacrifice had been part of a much bigger plan. Elena Whitmore spent the entire night staring at the message left in her room. The words were simple, but they changed everything. She had entered Frostvale believing she was making a sacrifice for Willow Creek. Now she wondered if she had unknowingly stepped into a plan created long before she was born. The next morning, she found Adrian Blackthorne in the royal courtyard. Snow covered the stone paths, and the quiet morning air surrounded them. He looked like the same Alpha King everyone feared, but Elena noticed the difference now. She could see the exhaustion behind his calm expression. Did you know about my family? She asked. Adrian turned toward her. He did not pretend not to understand. I found the records yesterday. Elena's expression hardened. And you were going to tell me when. The question stayed between them. Adrian had faced angry leaders, political threats, and impossible decisions. But Elena's disappointment was harder to face. I was trying to understand the truth before placing another burden on you, he said. Another burden? Elena repeated softly. Is that what I am to this kingdom? Adrian stepped closer, but stopped before crossing the distance between them. No, that is not what I meant. For the first time, Elena saw something she had not expected from the Alpha King. Regret. He was not afraid of losing control over a kingdom. He was afraid of hurting her. Before they could continue, the castle bells announced the arrival of the pack leaders. The royal gathering began that afternoon, and Elena was introduced officially as the woman connected to the future of Frostvale. But instead of celebration, she felt the pressure of every person watching her. Some leaders respected Adrian's decision. Others saw Elena as a threat. A village Omega cannot understand royal responsibility, one elder said. She has never carried the weight of a pack. Elena looked at him calmly. You are right. I have never carried a crown. The room became quiet. But I have carried the hopes of people who had nowhere else to turn. I know what responsibility feels like. Adrian watched as the room changed around her. She did not demand respect. She earned it. Later that evening, a formal ceremony was held in the Grand Hall. Elena stood beside Adrian as members of different packs observed them. Everyone expected the Alpha King to speak about duty and tradition. Instead, Adrian surprised them. Elena Whitmore is not standing here because she owes this kingdom anything, he said. She is here because she chose to stand beside us. The hall fell silent. It was the first time Adrian had publicly defended someone without considering political consequences. Elena looked at him, realizing that behind the title of Alpha King was a man who was learning to choose his own words instead of repeating the expectations placed on him. But not everyone was pleased. From the back of the hall, someone watched with quiet anger. Someone who believed Elena's arrival would destroy the balance of power inside Frostvale. That night, as Elena walked through the castle corridors, she found another message waiting. This time, there was no warning, only a name connected to the oldest secrets of the royal pack. And when Adrian saw it, the calm expression of the Alpha King disappeared, because he knew exactly who had sent it. Adrian Blackthorne knew the name written on the message before he finished reading it. His expression changed immediately. Not anger, not fear, something deeper. A memory he had spent years trying to bury. Elena Whitmore noticed the silence that followed. Who is it? She asked. Adrian looked at the paper again before answering. Someone who knows more about your arrival than they should. The name belonged to Marcus Vale, a former royal advisor who had disappeared from Frostvale years earlier after challenging the old traditions of the kingdom. Many believed he had abandoned the pack, but Adrian knew the truth. Marcus had been searching for the lost history of the Whitmore bloodline. And now he had returned at the exact moment Elena entered the royal world. The timing was not a coincidence. As the days passed, Elena began to feel the pressure growing inside the castle. Rumors spread through Frostvale. Some said she had hidden her identity. Others claimed she came to gain influence over the throne. Elena had spent her entire life being underestimated, but this felt different. These people were not simply judging her. They were questioning her loyalty. One evening, she found Adrian in the council chamber, surrounded by documents and old records. You knew this could happen, she said. Adrian looked up. I knew there would be people who questioned you. No, Elena replied. You knew there was a reason they would question me. The silence between them felt heavier than any argument. Adrian had always believed protecting someone meant keeping difficult truths away from them. But Elena did not need protection from the truth. She needed the freedom to face it. I should have told you everything I knew, Adrian admitted. Elena looked away. Yes, you should have. The words hurt because they were honest. For the first time since arriving at Frostvale, Elena wondered if she had made the wrong choice. Maybe she had mistaken his protection for trust. Maybe she had believed in a connection that only existed because of a mysterious bond neither of them understood. Meanwhile, Marcus Vale made his first public appearance before the pack leaders. He did not attack Adrian's leadership. Instead, he questioned the foundation of the entire kingdom. For generations, Frostvale has followed traditions without asking why they exist, Marcus said. Perhaps the next Alpha King should question whether the old ways still deserve to continue. The room divided instantly. Some leaders supported him. Others stood behind Adrian. The conflict was no longer about Elena alone. It was about the future of the pack. Later that night, Elena packed the few belongings she had brought from Willow Creek. Adrian found her near the castle entrance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You are leaving, he said quietly. Elena nodded. I came here to save my village. I never agreed to become part of a secret I do not understand. Adrian looked at her, knowing he could command every guard in the castle to stop her. He could use his authority as Alpha King. But he remembered her first words to him. She was not taken. She chose. If you leave, Adrian said, I will not stop you. Elena looked surprised, because in that moment, she saw the truth. The most powerful wolf in the kingdom was choosing to give her freedom instead of using his power. But as she stepped toward the gates of Frostvale, a new message arrived from Willow Creek. The village was no longer the only thing at risk, and Elena realized the decision she made to leave might have placed the entire pack in danger. Elena Whitmore had only traveled a few miles from Frostvale Castle when she realized something was wrong. The message from Willow Creek was short, but the meaning behind it was impossible to ignore. The village that had always been her home was losing its connection to the Royal Protection Agreement. People were afraid. They needed answers. And once again, Elena found herself standing between the safety of others and her own happiness. But this time, she was not alone. Adrian Blackthorne had followed the same path she had taken from the castle, not as a king arriving with authority, but as a man who needed to speak honestly. When Elena saw him approaching, she stopped. You should not be here, she said. Adrian looked at the road behind her. Neither should you. She almost smiled, but the disappointment in her heart remained. You are still trying to protect everyone. Adrian nodded. Yes. Even when they do not ask you to? He looked at her for a moment. Especially then. Elena understood that answer. It was the same reason she had left Willow Creek in the first place. They were both people who carried responsibilities they never asked for. But responsibility had also created the distance between them. I thought you were different, Elena said quietly. Adrian's expression changed. Different from what? From the people who only see me as something useful. The words affected him more than she expected. Elena, I never saw you that way. Then why did you keep secrets from me? Adrian had no easy answer. Because the truth was that he had spent his entire life believing that leaders protected others by carrying the hardest burdens alone. He had never learned how to trust someone with those burdens. Before he could respond, they reached Willow Creek. The village looked the same, but the atmosphere had changed. The people who once welcomed Elena now looked uncertain, not because they blamed her, but because they did not understand what her connection to Frostvale meant. An elder approached carefully. Elena, we need to talk. Inside the village hall, new information was revealed. The old agreement between Willow Creek and Frostvale was not created as a simple political arrangement. It was connected to the ancient balance between the packs. Elena's presence had awakened something forgotten. She was not chosen because she was easy to sacrifice. She was chosen because she had the ability to unite divided groups. But before Elena could process the truth, Marcus Vale appeared through a message delivered to the village leaders. His words were calm, but his intentions were clear. The kingdom has forgotten why the old traditions existed. Adrian Blackthorne believes power alone can protect the packs. He is wrong. Elena looked at Adrian. She expected him to respond as a king. Instead, he remained silent. Why are you not fighting back? She asked. Adrian answered softly. Because sometimes proving you are right is less important than proving you are willing to listen. That was the moment Elena saw the change in him. The Alpha King who once stood above everyone was finally learning to stand beside them. Later that night, Elena made her decision. She would return to Frostvale, but not because of an agreement. Not because of duty. She would return because she wanted to discover the truth and help the packs find a better future. Adrian did not ask her to stay. He simply offered his hand. Elena looked at it for a long moment before accepting. But when they returned toward the kingdom, they found Frostvale surrounded by tension. The council had already begun choosing sides. And this time, the battle was not about an old tradition. It was about who would decide the future of every pack in the kingdom. When Elena Whitmore returned to Frostvale Castle, she expected the cold stares to return. She expected whispers, questions, and the feeling that she did not belong. But this time, she walked through the castle gates differently. She was no longer the Omega who arrived asking for protection. She was someone who had chosen to stand there. The difference was small, but everyone noticed it. Especially Adrian Blackthorne. The Alpha King stood beside her as the royal council gathered. The room that once made Elena feel powerless now felt different. She had learned something important. Respect was not something given by a crown. It was something earned through courage and truth. The council meeting began with Marcus Vale presenting his accusations. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His words were carefully chosen. The kingdom is changing because an ancient bloodline has returned, Marcus said. But we must ask whether one person should hold that much influence over the future of all packs. Elena understood what he was doing. He was not attacking her directly. He was making everyone afraid of what she represented. Adrian looked toward the council members. The future of the packs will not be decided by fear. Marcus turned to him. And yet you are allowing your personal connection to influence your judgment. The room became silent. Everyone understood what he meant. The mate bond. The one connection that could change the balance of power inside the kingdom. Elena felt the pressure immediately. This was the moment when Adrian could prove Marcus right. If he protected her because of the bond, people would believe she was only valuable because of her connection to the Alpha King. But Adrian surprised everyone. He stepped away from Elena. This decision is not about the bond between us, he said. It is about whether every member of our packs deserves to have a voice. The words changed the entire room. Elena looked at him, realizing what he was doing. He was not claiming her as part of his power. He was giving her the freedom to stand beside him by choice. Later, Elena discovered the final piece of the hidden truth. The Whitmore bloodline was never meant to create another ruler. It existed to remind alpha leaders that power without compassion would eventually divide the packs they were meant to protect. The true purpose of her family was not control. It was balance. But before Elena could share what she found, Marcus revealed one last secret. Years earlier, Adrian's own father had hidden information about the old traditions. The previous Alpha King had believed that emotional attachments made leaders weak. Adrian had grown up carrying that belief. Elena finally understood why he struggled to trust the bond between them. He was not rejecting her. He was fighting everything he had been taught to become. That evening, Adrian stood alone on the castle balcony. Elena joined him quietly. "You could have used your power today," she said. "You could have ended the argument." Adrian looked over the kingdom below. A king who silences everyone is not a leader. He is only someone people fear. Elena smiled softly. It was the first time she saw him completely free from the weight of the crown. But their moment did not last. A royal messenger arrived with urgent news. Several packs that supported Marcus had withdrawn their loyalty from Frostvale. The kingdom was divided. The throne was no longer only Adrian's responsibility. It was now a choice that every pack would have to make. And standing at the center of that choice was Elena, the Omega everyone once ignored. The morning the future of Frostvale was decided, the entire kingdom felt different. The castle halls that once carried only the voices of nobles and powerful pack leaders were now filled with members from every corner of the territory. Wolves from small villages stood beside leaders from ancient bloodlines. For the first time in generations, everyone had been invited to speak. Adrian Blackthorn stood before them as the Alpha King, but he did not stand above them. He stood among them. Elena Whitmore watched from his side, remembering the day she first entered this castle. Back then, she believed she was only a sacrifice made to protect her village. She believed her worth was measured by what she could give away. Now she understood something different. Her value had never come from what others needed from her. It came from who she was. Marcus Vale stepped forward one final time. "You expect the packs to follow a king who allows personal feelings to guide his decisions?" he asked. The crowd waited for Adrian's answer. Years ago, Adrian would have responded with authority. He would have reminded everyone of his title and his strength. But the man standing there was not the same person. "A leader who cannot hear the people he protects is not worthy of their loyalty," Adrian said. "A crown does not make someone a king. Responsibility does." The words traveled through the crowd. Not because they were powerful, because they were honest. Elena then stepped forward. Many expected her to speak about her bloodline, her connection to ancient traditions, or her place beside Adrian. Instead, she spoke about Willow Creek. She spoke about the people who had been forgotten because they were considered too small to matter. "A pack is not strong because the strongest wolves stand above everyone else," she said. "A pack is strong because no one is left behind." The silence that followed was different from before. It was not judgment. It was understanding. The truth about the Whitmore legacy finally became clear. Elena was never meant to replace the power of the Alpha King. She was meant to remind that power what it was supposed to protect. The council that once questioned her now accepted a new agreement between the packs. One built not on fear or obligation, but on trust. Marcus Vale did not lose because he was defeated by force. He lost because the idea he represented no longer had a place in the future of the kingdom. A kingdom built only on control could survive for a time, but a kingdom built on respect could last for generations. Months later, Willow Creek changed forever. The small village that once feared losing its protection became a place where different packs gathered to rebuild old relationships. Elena often returned there, not as someone who had been sent away, but as someone who had helped create a new path. And in Frostvale Castle, Adrian learned that being an Alpha King was not about carrying every burden alone. It was about trusting the people who chose to stand beside him. One evening, as snow fell over the mountains, Elena stood with Adrian overlooking the kingdom. "Do you ever miss the person you were before all of this?" she asked. Adrian smiled slightly. "I do not think that person ever knew what he was missing." Elena looked toward the lights of the villages below. The journey had started with a promise made out of necessity. It ended with a choice made out of trust. Because sometimes the person the world sees as the weakest is the one who teaches the strongest how to lead. And sometimes the greatest power an Alpha King can have is not the ability to command others. It is the courage to listen, to change, and to choose love without taking away someone else's freedom.